I think it's appropriate at a moment of anti-Blackness that we are pro-Black. I still want to be advancing an affirmative vision, a North Star for Black America.
Is now the time for reparations? Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley says yes, and she's here with me now to discuss a bill that she has reintroduced in Congress. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be with you.
So this is, I gotta say, a pretty bold move given where we are, our socio-political climate right now. Why reintroduce this bill right now?
Yeah. Well, first, since it is Black History Month, I want to make sure that there's no erasure on my part. I am picking up the mantle, building upon the legacy of Congressman John Conyers, and who then passed it on to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who recently transitioned, and her daughter, who served in Congress to finish out her term after she passed away, said after a lot of contemplation and prayer and consultation with the staff of the Congresswoman and even her own family, that they hoped that I would take up the mantle. So I do that with great humility and with a tremendous sense of responsibility. Dr. King said the time is always right to do what is right. And I think at a time of, quite frankly, anti-Black racism on steroids, coming out of this hostile Trump-Musk White House.
You have said he has his hands in everything, Elon Musk.
Absolutely. And really an effort to resegregate society, to erase Black history, that this is the right time, because this is not only about truth and reconciliation and healing from the past, the vestiges of chattel slavery, which we are still living with today. It is also about Black futures.
So what exactly would this bill do?
So H.R. 40 would establish a federal commission of 15 members, some all appointed, including some 6 experts on everything from housing to healthcare to economics, who would study the impact of slavery and then make common sense, thoughtful, holistic, comprehensive reparation proposals. And they would have 18 months to do that work. And I should say that this is a movement that was led in Congress, but what has carried that movement is the work of advocates who have labored in love, expended great sweat equity for many decades, 30 plus years.
And we know it's
in
layered
this fight
with city level efforts to do this, including here in Boston.
Absolutely.
GBH's Soraya Wintersmith has reported on this through the podcast What Is Owed, and how Boston is trying to figure out how to do this as well.
And that is the point. So we find ourselves at a moment of attacks and rollbacks, 50 years of precedent and affirmative action in higher ed because of a weaponized Supreme Court. Similarly, painful decisions or harmful decisions in the Minority Business Development Agency and our small businesses' ability to access capital. Even the decision about Roe, with a disparate impact on Black moms and our families, with that overturning. And we're still digging out from the impacts of chattel slavery, of Jim Crow, of redlining. And so at a time of unprecedented attacks and an aggressive attempt to dismantle and defund diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and those impacts in higher ed, in healthcare, to small business, and a $10 trillion racial wealth gap. I think it's appropriate at a moment of anti-Blackness that we are pro-Black, and we continue to build upon the momentum throughout this country, municipalities throughout the country who have been successful in redress, the work of truth, reconciliation, and healing, and again, the work that's taking place with our own Boston Reparations Task Force. So while I'm blunting the harms of this administration and the Supreme Court, I still want to be advancing an affirmative vision, a North Star for Black America.
Now, given the moment that we are in, though, even if this were to make it through Congress, the president could veto something like this very easily. So what makes you confident? Is it so much about pushing this through, or is it about carrying the legacy so that one day we can see this realized?
It's both and. It is about continuing the legacy. It is about keeping up the momentum, and those North Stars, those affirmative visions for the country that we deserve and that we believe is possible. I'm not going to wane in my advocacy for universal child care. I'm not going to wane in my efforts to close the racial and ultimately eliminate the racial wealth gap. I'm not going to wane in my efforts to create more housing that is affordable or to hold banks accountable to consumers. And I'm not going to wane in efforts to advance reparations. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. I know the legislative landscape is one that is sobering, but this is really just about our entire country, because although it is about truth, reconciliation, and healing and redress for Black Americans, any person of conscience should be committed to this. And there's precedent. We've done this with Japanese Americans who were in internment camps. We've done the work of truth and reconciliation when it comes to indigenous communities. And we should be doing this for Black Americans. And again, it's not just about our history and acknowledgement of Black history, which is American history, at a time when they seek to erase it and to ban our books and to deny our stories and our representation, and to roll back programs and policies and civil rights progress. It's also about Black futures.
And there was a 2022 Pew Research Center study that found that 77% of Black Americans did support reparations for descendants of enslaved persons in the U.S. At the same time, we know that the Black experience is vast. There are a lot of people across the diaspora, and there's conversations, this was explored in the What Is Owed podcast, about who gets what, right? And what reparations actually looks like. So how do we tackle that part of this?
Well, that will be the work of the commission. So our first responsibility here is to pass H.R. 40 and to establish this commission, and this 15-member commission will do that work. There is a lot to consider, but I think that process is one, that process is one that should be holistic, comprehensive, and deliberate. Reparations is more than just cutting a check. It is addressing the systemic ways in which the vestiges of chattel slavery show up in the Massachusetts 7th and throughout this country.
Do you have support for this in Congress from your fellow Democrats?
Oh, I'm very encouraged. We're currently in the 119th Congress. In the 118th Congress, when Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was still with us and stewarding this bill, we had close to 130 co-sponsors for this, so that was more than we've ever had. And I'm already at 80, and we just reintroduced the bill. So we're going to continue to build up our co-sponsors and ultimately get this to the floor for a vote. Again, we're building upon the momentum. We are further along than we ever have been when it comes to making H.R. 40 the law of the land. It has previously been marked up, reported out of the Judiciary Committee, again, unprecedented number of co-sponsors. So I want to continue to build upon that, and that's what we're focused on. And again, there's momentum throughout the country. So many municipalities have reparations task force.
So we know that right now the Democrats are down. I think it's frank to say that, right? Considering what happened in this past election cycle. And there's things are moving very, very fast on the Republican side. What is the Democratic strategy right now?
I think that's a fair question, but I also think a more appropriate question is, what are the Republicans in the House doing and the Republicans in the Senate? Why are they being complicit in this harm to our shared constituents? The executive actions that have been rolled out fast and furious by this hostile administration don't have anything to do with lifting people up or helping people. It's all about harm that's being done to people, our shared constituents. Every day we're experiencing chaos, cruelty, and corruption. And so I'm appealing to people of conscience, which should include my colleagues across the aisle, to protect our constituents who stand to experience great harm. They've established this so-called Department of Government Efficiency, but I don't know what is efficient about dismantling and defunding and denying programs and agencies that serve the people. You're only making people hungrier, poorer, sicker, and less safe. Democrats did everything we could to stop Donald Trump from being elected because everything that he's doing now was laid out in Project 2025, which was not a blueprint, it was a playbook for wholesale harm. And that's what we see playing out in real time as they seek to completely take a wrecking ball to the infrastructure of our government.
So if this was a playbook, why weren't the Democrats ready to respond?
We're ready, and we are operating under the rule of the law, which this administration is not. As you'll find with many of the executive actions that they've rolled out, they are unconstitutional, and they are unlawful. And so we're matching their energy by being aggressive with litigation, and we've won a number of those cases already, which have either helped to slow roll these assaults or to stop them entirely, like the birthright citizenship.
So, Congresswoman,
Litigation, legislation, and mobilization.
Now, it's clear that you, not only here in the district, but on Capitol Hill, are a leader in this party. But who is the person who is rising up in the party to really turn things around and really stand up to the Trump administration? Is it you?
I don't think it's any one person that does the work of leadership, of justice, of social change. History has proven to us that what ushers in change is not any one leader. Dr. King was an extraordinary man and leader, but it was a movement. It was a movement that had the imagination, the strategy, and the stamina to apply pressure to the government to ultimately act. So it's not about any one leader. It's certainly not about any one leader in a party or any one leader for the country. We all can lead, and we see that in this moment. I've been a part of mobilization efforts in front of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Department of Treasury, more recently at the O'Neill building here in District, in solidarity with federal workers who've lost their jobs. Their work is unfinished. Their livelihoods have been threatened. Their ability to provide for their own families. They're dedicated public servants who've just been dismissed callously. And everyday people are showing up to be a part of these actions in resistance. And that's what we're going to have to keep the pace up. Public outcry, public outrage, and that pressure.
Have you heard from any of your constituents who say are federal workers and are impacted by the cuts that the Trump administration is enacting?
Absolutely. I was again, shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with many of them, rallying in resistance in front of the O'Neill building recently, but I've also convened on my own roundtables with impacted federal workers, and the stories are devastating. Again, these are dedicated public servants, very talented, who could have taken their talents anywhere, but they wanted to be in service to their country and to their government, and what they deserved was their humanity to be centered, for their dignity to be preserved, for there to be visibility of the work that they do. Instead, what they have been met with is callousness and dismissal, threatening emails from this so-called Department of Government Efficiency, which has just taken a machete again to government, and pink slips. But the thing that is so telling about these federal workers is that their first priority is not even how am I going to provide for my own family. Their concerns, first and foremost, are what of my unfinished work? What does this mean for the building of more housing that is affordable? What does this mean when it comes to cancer research? What does this mean in terms of a veteran who is in need of health care? So all of those, we're finding that we're at a painful inflection point as a country. And, a leader who I respect tremendously, who recently passed away, Cecile Richards, said, the question is posed later, when everything was at stake for the country, what did you do? And the only acceptable answer is everything. Everything that we could. The Republican strategy is to flood the zone. It's to overwhelm. It's shock and awe. So that's why you see these flurry of executive actions, some 70 plus, in a month's time. It's meant to overwhelm us. It's meant to have us constantly reacting.
Yeah, and I think it's being felt. I know it's being felt from Capitol Hill all the way to the person who's going to work or isn't going to work every day as a result of all this. So with that, I think we're all kind of having conversations about how we stay grounded right now. For you, Congresswoman, how do you stay rooted in these times?
Yeah. Pun intended. Yes.
You got me.
Yes. Well, by staying rooted in community, it's really important to be proximate not only to the pain, but also to the joy. This is a movement and a fight and the work of justice, but there's also great joy in this movement as well. And when you have a weaponized administration, White House, a weaponized Supreme Court that is gutting protections, looking to roll back decades of progress, looking to deny us our fundamental rights that we've earned and even our birthrights. We can't give them our joy too. So what keeps me rooted is being in community. Certainly my faith guides me, my family anchors me, and I'm a voracious reader, and probably what I read the most is poetry.
Mm-hmm.
That is certainly giving me joy, keeping me grounded, and studying movements that have been confronted with the threat of authoritarianism, fascism. How did they respond?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm focused on right now is how do I replicate the strength and the instructions of those movements in this moment.
You mentioned family. Obviously, Valentine's Day just passed, and you posted on your Instagram how you and your husband, who I know you call your Black Diamond, take turns DJing on your date nights.
Right.
And you made Valentine's Day playlist and even put up a poll for folks to vote on which playlist they liked the best. You won. Have you been rubbing this in Ms.
Oh, is that
Harris's
the latest
face?
count? Okay, because like an hour ago,
I think you were at 53%.
They said, "Oh,
he was at
Conan is
47.
because people were telling me that he had tipped the scale because he had Anita Baker and Luther.
Okay, now.
But other people told me that I tipped the scale because I had Faith Evans and Lauryn Hill and some other, So they both playlists are a vibe. Let me just say that. So I think we're both winners. Okay. But we do love R&B and music certainly soothes the soul, and we love a good dance in our driveway or in the kitchen. That's one of the ways that my husband courted me. And so, we've continued that. But I think it's important that people are intentional in informing and in the preservation of their joy in this moment. And I also want to say rest. People, they mean to overwhelm us. They mean to fatigue us so that folks will be indifferent and also inactive. And so I want to encourage people, it's okay to rest. We can sleep in shifts. They're coming for everything, so we have to do everything to blunt and to mitigate these harms, but we do have to take care of ourselves. So be intentional about informing and preserving your joy. Be intentional about being in community. Dr. King said, where do we go from here? Chaos, or community. This is a moment of chaos, of corruption, of cruelty. So you have to continue to choose community. Be rooted in community, and we're going to get to the other side of this. I believe that.
Well, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, thank you so much for leaving us with those words, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Paris.